Let's get stuck in with the first characters that you'll encounter in Chinese. These are the first characters in any phrasebook or any textbook, and for a good reason. We'll learn first how to say hello in Chinese. Unlike a textbook though, we're actually going to go ahead and say hello to native Chinese speakers today. In fact, within the next 15 minutes or so, you will have said hello to somebody in Chinese, and that's pretty cool. I've put the word for hello here on screen. These characters are pronounced ni hao, and the pinyin is just below the two characters. Pinyin is the system used to Romanize Chinese sounds into Roman letters, or English letters as we know them. If this pinyin here is new to you, I'd recommend you check out the free pinyin course on Sensible Chinese. I've added a link below the video, but if that sounds too much trouble right now, then you can learn the ins and outs of pinyin later, and for now just rely on the native recordings I've provided with this course and try to replicate their pronunciations as accurately as possible. Replicating native pronunciation always trumps written approximations. Therefore, even if you read how to make the sounds, it's never going to be quite as accurate as just listening and working on repeating and getting feedback from a native speaker. I've included a set of native recordings for you to listen to and to try to replicate, and you'll find a native male and a native female voice within these recordings. Again, check below this video for audio recordings, and when in doubt, always strive to replicate the native speakers. I'm not going to dwell here because we're going to move on and get ourselves a speaking partner so that we can practice speaking and get feedback, get corrections as soon as possible. I want to look at the first character in ni hao. The first character is ni, which has a rising tone. This is the second tone in Chinese. The rising tone does actually exist in English. We just use it at the end of a sentence in order to mark the whole sentence as a question. Think of a question like, do you speak English? On the final part of that sentence in English, we're using the rising tone, a rising inflection. Less charitably, it's also the reason why teenage girls from Southern California, from SoCal, are the butt of many jokes, because they tend to add a rising inflection to the end of non-question sentences. So even in English, we do use the tones, and we are sensitive to when they're not being used correctly in the context of English. What we need to do is transfer our ability to recognize tones into the Chinese language, and I'll be talking about that a bit more now. The difference between tones in English and in Chinese is that in English we use tones on a sentence level inflection basis to add meaning to the sentence as a whole. In Chinese, tones are applied to individual syllables in order to change the meaning of that particular syllable. In the case of the syllable ni, ni, which we're using in our first character, we could have the first tone ni, we could have the second tone ni, we could have the third tone ni, or the fourth tone falling ni. These are applied on a syllable by syllable basis rather than on a sentence. The second character in our word ni hao, the second character here is hao. Hao has a third tone. The third tone is probably the most slippery in Chinese. The common conception is that it dips and then rises like a trampoline, as in hao. This is not quite right. In fact, it's better to think of the third tone as a deep, low tone. Without a syllable, the third tone almost sounds like a grumble, like a deep down in the throat. Make the noise in the back of your throat as if you are discontented. Imagine being forced to accept something you don't want to and saying, fine. That growled low tone on the fine is like the third tone in Chinese. Applied to the hao sound, the third tone sounds like hao. Rather than dwell on how to nail the tones, I want to instead introduce the fact that we do have similarities in English and that tones are very possible for you to learn. And right now I want you to start speaking and start getting feedback from a native speaker. I could personally talk for hours about the tones and make you read various articles and show you diagrams of the mouth and the tongue, but unless you start talking and getting feedback about your personal mistakes, you're not going to progress. So use these basic guidelines for now and just get started. A native speaker will be able to help you make it sound correct. I'll be showing you how to get a native speaker on board to help you in the third and the last of today's videos. Let's have a look at the characters themselves. The first character here is ni, which means you in Chinese. The second character is hao, which means good or well. By putting you and good together, we create the word for hello. The logic here is a bit like, hey, what's up, or you good in English. We're not necessarily asking a question, but instead just using the words as a general rhetoric greeting. I might say, what's up, to a friend, and they'd respond, what's up. Neither of us are actually expecting a full explanation of how the other person is feeling or what they're up to. It's just a greeting. I'm not going to go through how to handwrite the characters right now, and I'm going to show you why tomorrow in day 2. For now, we want to focus on communication and not getting bogged down by the handwriting, so don't panic. Communication first and then calligraphy, and worrying about the presentation of our handwritten Chinese. In the next video, I'm going to go on and expand your knowledge of the characters a little by looking at the internal structure of Chinese characters and the characters that we've just looked at.